welcome to this podcast from the Professional Practices and Financial Services team at Saffery. My name is Jamie Lane. I'm a partner and head of the group based in our Bournemouth office. Today, I have the pleasure of being joined by Chris White, who's the head of Strategic Consultancy at QuoStar, who are a full service IT provider, but have a significant client base in the professional services sector. We're also joined by our very own David Fazakerley, who's our IT director at Saffery. As a bit of background, Chris has extensive experience within the IT field, in particular within the financial services and legal sectors, and David has worked in professional services firms for over 15 years. And today, we're going to be discussing the ever-evolving world of IT and professional services, and in particular, the biggest changes we've seen over the last year or so, the main challenges facing professional services firms, AI and the benefits it can bring, but also the impact on IT security, and a general discussion on what firms need to consider with technology developing so quickly. So I suppose first question to you, Chris, what have you seen as being the biggest changes in IT over the past 12 months, and what positives have they brought?
Okay, well, thanks, Jamie. I think, as always with technology, with IT, there's always change. Change is a constant, and there's always change happening in the technology environment. Over the last 12 months, 24 months, 36 months, there have been a number of sort of major trends, I think, happening. Just point out a few of them in no particular order, but the move to the cloud, I think, is continuing. Over the past few years, we've seen a major move from people running their own IT environments on premise, far more now sort of move to the cloud. Managed service providers are in the picture as well. So people, as they not running their own technologies themselves in-house, but using third parties a lot more, which gives more flexibility and arguably access to better technology as well. So I think that's one trend which is certainly continuing. Something which started with the pandemic and all the home working, hybrid working. Again, we're seeing that, I suppose, mature in many ways. Organizations are becoming sort of more, I suppose, mature in the way they're using hybrid working. They're adjusting their accommodation needs. They're sort of adjusting their policies about how many days per week that people need to be in the office and things like that. And I think from a pure technology environment as well, I know at the start of the pandemic, a lot of organizations, professional services businesses really struggled to get people working from home because they haven't invested in that type of technology. And I think that is maturing as well. And most professional services organizations have a pretty robust hybrid working type arrangement in place as well, giving a lot more flexibility to the workforce and also to the business as well. A big one, which we hear a great deal about, is cyber. Cyber threats to businesses ever increasing. The cyber actors are becoming far more sophisticated in the way they approach organizations and try to extract data, money, whatever else from these organizations. We've heard that a significant global law firm based in the City of London has actually been hacked, and they've got significant problems with cyber at the moment, which I'm sure they're working very hard to try and resolve. So I think the point is here, if a significant global law firm can be attacked with all of the defenses and all of the money, the investment they throw at cyber, it's something which size doesn't really matter. Any organization can be attacked, and it's something which organizations need to take very, very seriously. And I know it's top of the agenda for a lot of IT organizations in professional services, and indeed it should be on the board agenda as well, because it's a serious, serious threat. It's also something which the regulators are taking very seriously as well as at the moment, and they're expecting their member firms to take it seriously and at the end of the day protect client data. If you're caught out with a breach and the regulators assess that you haven't taken cyber seriously enough, there's potential there for very large fines and issues. And the final one, which I guess everybody would probably be expecting me to mention, is AI, artificial intelligence. Very interesting subject. There's an awful lot of froth and hype around it, but at the same time, artificial intelligence, machine learning is having a major impact on the way professional services businesses are being run. And that will continue in the future. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but those are some of the biggest things that I think are happening.
Thank you, Chris. I think it's fair to say there's a lot of things moving very quickly on a number of fronts. So my next question is for David, really, around what's keeping you up at night. And I can probably guess from Chris's introduction there that there's pretty big subjects there that you're having to deal with.
Well, absolutely. Hello, everyone. And the cyber risk that definitely resonates, not just with what's going on in the market now, but when you look at what is always relevant within a professional service firm, understanding the risks, and some of those are geopolitical as well as regulatory, and the geopolitical uncertainties sometimes lead to an increase in cyber risks. And it's a never-ending investment and renewal cycle where cyber is concerned. Chris's point is really relevant in the sense that actually, even when you've got huge budgets and hugely focused departments on this area, the risk is very real and can still be very pertinent. I myself have lived through a cyber incident back in 2013, which was a decade ago now, but it's still raw. And when I hear about these examples in the market, emotionally, I actually react because it resonates with me as to how difficult it was when I had to deal with similar challenges before. So for firms in professional services like Saffery and others, we have to continually make sure that our threat assessment, our understanding, our investment in technology, our modernity around cyber management is there. I've always had three key words in this area. Stop it getting in. If you can't stop it getting in, limit its damage once it is in. And then if it does cause damage, you're able to recover as quickly as possible because of the resiliency of your systems and platforms. Because it's not a question if you get attacked. Everyone's attacked all of the time. Things will get through. It's what you do in all three of those areas of stopping it, trying to limit it, and then certainly recover from it, I think is what's important to actually keep us as safe as we can be in a very, very difficult area. So, Jamie, that's what always keeps me, not just in Saffery, but in any firm I've worked for, the cyber risk and dealing with it is the thing that keeps me awake at night.
So I suppose following on from that, do you a lot of businesses will traditionally have contingency planning. Something happens in the business, they have the go-to plans. We saw it probably in COVID in the main. Would if you're a managing partner listening to this, you should really have a proper process in place for what do you do after that gets into the system?
Yes, and it's not just an IT problem. And my learnings from 10 years ago is you really needed a team of people beyond IT to help you deal with a situation in a contingency situation, communicating with all your internal stakeholders and how you do that. Your IT team is too busy actually dealing with the problem and trying to recover from it. So you need others to actually manage the internal messaging and also the external messaging. You also need to have carefully chosen third parties, your cybersecurity specialists, your managed service providers in the security space, who are ready to react and assist you immediately and sort of complement and beef up your team. So for any other managing partners out there, it's not just about your own IT resource, it's your own internal resources beyond IT and it's other specialist third parties. If you've built a good team, a hybrid team, if we can call it that, of third parties, internal resources, plus your IT team, and you have a plan around it, then you're sort of ready to go. But I think, my only other piece of advice on that is don't build that plan as though it's something that might not happen. I know it sounds dark. Build it as though it's going to happen. Make it robust, and you can be much more sure that when something might happen, even if it's quite minor, you're in a very good position to sort of react in the right way.
I'd absolutely agree with that, David. I think it's planning in advance. So when it happens, you know exactly what to do, who's going to be involved, what roles and responsibilities are there. And as you say, David, underline the fact that this is not just an IT issue. A lot of cyber threats, come from a lot of organizations. Think IT are the people that can actually defend the organization. And of course, there's a huge amount that IT can do in terms of putting in place the right technology to protect the organization, firewalls, and all of those sorts of things. However, the human element is a significant factor and one which must not be ignored. A lot of cyber attacks and that impact organizations actually come through things like phishing attacks, people clicking on that link, those sorts of things, which has got nothing in or little technology can do about that. It's all about educating your staff to be aware of potential for these attacks. And that education, again, doesn't just happen once or once a year or whatever. That's a continual education process you need to put your staff through.
Yes, it's much better that the people who work within your firm are on the cautious side or the reactionary side to things rather than the other way, and their continued investment in their L&D and their learning and their coaching and their awareness, as a number of organizations do, of course, it means that I'd much rather a higher rate of help desk call asking if something is legit or not than the other way around, where people just think it's okay and it's not. So I'd rather people be more, overreacting rather than underreacting. Is something you can deal with. You can just accept you're going to get more calls and issues about things which aren't a threat, but I'd rather it that way around than the other.
I think my experience being on the sort of, I suppose, the user end of this is that the human element is obviously huge, and I think it's also becoming culturally aware of the risk. So having the training, etc., and the frequent training, continuously having it sort of the front of our minds about what we're clicking, and and what shouldn't we be clicking. And I think it's that. I always think it's that sort of cultural journey to actually make it sort of day to day rather than something that might never happen to you.
I think also, what we've got to remember is that, of course, we're here talking about sort of the challenges facing business, but these challenges face, every single member of the population who interacts with a computer on a day-to-day basis. So it's as much in sort of our personal lives as well that we need to be very aware of cyber. Only recently, I had somebody purporting to be a bank call me and try and extract information from me about my passwords and those sorts of things. Thankfully, this is my life, so I was very, very aware of it. But you can just imagine somebody who's not so au fait or in touch with these sorts of things, how easily they can actually be drawn into it.
And Chris, you might recognize this as well. It means that things have become more disruptive for people. It's not as simple to open the application as it once was, or to get access to something as it once was, because of two-factor, multi-factor authentication. There are steps to go through, and it's an interesting dilemma, because I appreciate people want to be able to work quickly and immediately with immediate access, and we live in a world where we have to have a few steps now to secure that access and to authenticate the individual as the cyber criminal threat actors get more sophisticated. So we have to create some barriers to prevent that, but that can be a little disruptive or annoying sometimes. So it is again, that's part of the education piece, I think, with everybody in our firms, is to actually sort of welcome the two-factor authentication of the things as something that's keeping us as safe as possible. So rather than looking at it as an annoyance, one should look at it as something that is reassuring as a gateway. It's about, I think, how we look at these things.
Absolutely, and everybody has to take personal responsibility for this. It's not sort of, as I said earlier, it's not IT's. IT has got a big part to play in it, but it's not just IT's responsibility. It's everybody in the business.
Thank you. The next thing I want to talk about is cloud. There's been a massive move from sort of, I think you term it on-premise solutions to perhaps off-premise maybe. And that, I think, again, is a big change for a number of firms and probably creates risks and benefits, I imagine. Perhaps, David, firstly, maybe you could just talk about what should be the key considerations of trying to move into a sort of cloud-based environment.
I think one of the things, and we at Saffery have recently been on our journey to go from on-premise to Microsoft Azure-based public cloud environments. And in my own career in the last decade or so, as Chris knows, I've been responsible for building private cloud environments. And I think things have moved on from that now to trust the Azures and the AWSs with people's environments. It's moved on. For me, one of the big factors is treating the provision of IT infrastructure and computing power and storage, if we just talk about it in that phrase, very much as a utility and not something that internal IT departments should be building or doing anymore. It's like the electricity or the water or the gas supply or the telecom supply or the network supply. Well, it's actually the IT compute power supply. You should pay for what you use. And when you don't need it, and I'll give a reason why you might not need it as much in the future, you can scale down. Well, when you bought all your own infrastructure and spent millions of pounds on it or hundreds of thousands of pounds on it, well, that's it. You're stuck with it. You've got to depreciate it through years, whether you use it or not. It has very little resale value sometimes. So as the world moves more and more to SaaS, software as a service, where actually you don't even host the software yourself, but you move the software you use to the supplier that provides the platform themselves as well as the software. You're not even hosting that in your own Azure environments. So you need an environment that can collapse down so that you're not overpaying for that, as the trend to go software cloud as well as infrastructure cloud is what the world is sort of doing now and where it's going. So yes, I have become reassured in the past 24 months that the public cloud offerings of Azure and others are now far more secure and have the security layers to them to perhaps actually in some ways be a little bit more secure than when you do these things on-prem or in private clouds. So, that's very much the direction of travel globally in professional services as well. We're not unique that way. We're on that journey, but it is moving our software solutions to software in the cloud with their providers and a sort of flexible public cloud infrastructure environment that we can flex up and down as we need it.
I think it's absolutely right. And I think something which you said, David, resonates with me. Increasingly, we're becoming consumers of technology. When I first started working in IT, my job was basically to write systems. I was the provider of technology for my business. These days, my job is all around sort of selecting the right partners to work with, understand intimately the technologies that our business needs to actually run and service our clients, and make sure that we're providing that to our users and supporting our users in the use of that technology. So very much consumers of technology. And as you say, with the cloud, the ideal cloud environment is almost like sort of electricity. When you come into a room, you flick the switch on, the light goes on. You use that. When you go out of the room, you flick the switch off, the light goes off, and you stop paying for it. And this is the way in which compute is actually going these days. With
and
sort
Chris,
of
would you agree
service.
though it's also about what do you want your own IT people to do? Where do they add value within the firm? Is it keeping the lights on, or is it actually spending more time with our internal stakeholders and users about what they're really doing and what they need to do and what our clients need? And actually having IT teams that are very focused on great solution delivery to deliver things that move the dial, rather than, hey, we've just kept the servers running and done the backups, which is important and it has to happen. But is that really where IT adds the value? And I think that's where the question now is.
I absolutely agree with that. Running a network, running a data center, running server farm doesn't actually add any value to your business. As you say, it's critical, it must happen, but I would argue a third party is probably in a far better place to provide that than you are yourself. Ultimately, Saffery's as an accountancy firms. I've worked with lots of law firms, and law firms are all about providing legal advice. Accountancy firms are about providing accounting advice. We're not IT shops. And if you are an organization which is a provider of technology, that is what you do. You're very good accountants, we're very good lawyers, they're very good at providing technology and arguably a lot better than we can be. And also, we talk about cyber, they should be in a position to provide far better defenses than we could ever possibly do, because it's not our job. It's not our core activity. And I absolutely agree with the comment you made, David, was that what I've always tried to do in running sort of global organizations, IT organizations, is to get rid of the plumbing, if you like, the day-to-day sort of operation, to allow my IT teams to focus on adding real value, and that's intimately understanding our business processes, what our clients need, making sure that we have the right technology in place to deliver that excellent service to our clients. And that increasingly is what our job's about. So the role of the IT manager, the CIO, is pivoting away from the person who's providing the technology to the person who's actually making sure that we are making the best use of available technology within our businesses, and looking for innovation, looking for the next big thing, and looking to see how we can add most value to the business.
So, Chris, we talked earlier a little bit about, well, you mentioned about sort of, it's expensive, dealing with cyber risk, etc., the cloud, the development in IT, it's expensive. How much pushback, are senior people in, professional services firms giving you about, what their IT budget should be? It's a little bit like marketing, a marketing budget, and I say this flippantly in terms of it's very hard when you're in a fee-earning environment to be able to say this is the payback, and you don't know until it's gone wrong really how expensive it could be.
No, that's right. No, I think again, the job as the CIO, the head of IT, the IT director, we need to demonstrate value for money. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And we see too many examples. IT in the past has had sort of a bad name. It's always sort of, oh, you're spending all of this money and you're always late in delivering things. It doesn't really do what we want it to do. And I think we're seeing things change now. And I tell you, one of the big moments, I think, and one of the big things that drove a lot of this change was the pandemic. And I think, if we think back, a few years ago, before pandemic, majority of people were working in the office for 5 days a week. They had a PC in front of them, and they had the big printer by the side of them. And then the pandemic came, and nobody could go into the office. And I think we went through a number of phases with the pandemic. The first phase was sort of panic. How on earth are we going to survive as a business? Because we're not used to working at home. We're not used to working in these ways. And I think IT was seen almost as the savior to a lot of businesses, because without technology, businesses wouldn't survive. We all know in professional services and indeed most businesses, we spend a lot of time using technology, and professional services, probably everybody sort of spends most of their day behind a PC of some type. And I think that was a light bulb moment for a lot of businesses. And they saw the value that technology actually delivered to the business, to the firm. I think professional services, it's interesting, particularly sort of the more traditional partnership model, where partners take home sort of the profits at the end of the year. Would you rather actually take home another £10,000 this year, or would you rather invest in a CRM system or something like that? Well, it's very easy. Well, actually, no, I want that £10,000, please. I don't want a CRM system, particularly if I'm retiring next year. I'm not going to see the benefit of it. So our jobs as running IT for professional services firms, it's all about demonstrating the value that we are delivering to the firm. And again, we've talked a lot about sort of the role of IT, of technology. Technology is a business discipline. A lot of people, certainly in the past, have viewed it as a technology. And it's the PC on the desk, it's the server in the corner of the room or whatever. They see it purely as a piece of tech. It's not. It's a business enabler. That's what technology is all about these days. It's actually about making the right investments to ensure you actually optimize the value you are contributing to the business, and you're making the lives of our users as easy as possible, and you're putting them in the best possible place to deliver an excellent service to clients. That's what it's all about. So, it's like anything really. We need to demonstrate the return on the investment we're making. So if we want to put in a new system or a new piece of tech, we need to basically be able to explain in words that the board understands exactly what we are doing, why we're doing it, and the benefit of it. I think one of the differences, I've worked outside of professional services as well, one of the differences with sort of what I would call a normal corporate compared to a professional services firm is that an accountancy firm is full of accountants. A law firm is full of lawyers, and they're very specialists in their own particular areas. And compare that to sort of what I would call a sort of normal corporate. A normal corporate, a lot of senior management have a lot more exposure to technology, to IT, to strategy, and those sorts of things than you might have, your average user might have in professional services. So our job, that David and I sort of hold, is all about being able to explain to these very, very clever professionals what it is we are doing, why we're doing it, and why we need to spend the money, and the benefit is going to actually deliver to the business. First and foremost, I see myself as a business leader. I happen to be running an IT shop, so it's very much that way around as opposed to an IT person, an IT technical person. And the more senior you become, I think, in professional services particularly, the more you need to actually understand that. You need to be able to talk to our users in a language they understand, but also talk to our IT teams in a language they understand as well. So a lot of what we do is actually translate that message.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it's about delivering value and making sure people understand it.
Okay. No, thank you. We've held off until now to talk about AI, which has obviously had lots of press, good and bad. So I suppose, David, firstly to you, where do you see the opportunities for professional services firms for use of AI?
Let me start by saying 12 months ago, I was pretty terrified by it. And I'll be very candid and say that what I was concerned about is that I didn't feel personally informed enough, because it really was, although, robotic process automation has been around for years and bits of AI, the whole Gen AI, large language model, ChatGPT was a bit of a bang at Christmas last year. And then it has, we're not even up to Christmas this year. So with, less than 12 months, it's been quite an accelerated journey. And I know I'm not, because I've spoken to my peers in other firms, we all feel as though we were in the same boat. And our biggest concern was, I suppose, about what you could call privileged information exposure. In other words, you accidentally put into ChatGPT sensitive client information and it's out there in the world. And that's sort of how it was actually last Christmas. And so, you could take different tracks on this, which is to try and stop up the river, build the dam and stop it from happening. But of course, that's not reality, because there's nothing to install. It's just out there. People will find the ways to access those systems through personal elements, because ChatGPT, etc., is just part of the internet now. It's just available. So you can't do that. I think you have to take a sensible policy route. But what I've done in the last 12 months is educate myself and spend time researching, going to conferences, going to seminars, and also the technology is incredibly evolved even in this less than 12 months. So at our firm now, we use Bing AI Chat, which is ChatGPT, but it's secured within our tenancy so that the data doesn't go anywhere. That's something we're beginning to advocate, so that we can be secure in our data. The Azure environments are now locked down with Azure AI. That's been released, and of course Microsoft on the 1st of November released Copilot, which and I'm sure us and other firms, I'm sure, will be looking at Copilot in this next year, this sort of digital assistant. So my anxieties through education have come down. I see it now as my role within our firm and others to promote how to do things safely and to get the benefits. And the benefits are substantive. I mean, I already have changed my behavior in how I do internet search. I'm now addicted to Bing AI Chat. And because it's such a richer experience in the results it's giving me, I don't use it. I wrote a speech for the first time using GPT 3 weeks ago. And, the biggest observation, and I've shared this internally, is I thought it was hilarious. And I had so much fun creating a speech. I did it in the sort of way I'd ordinarily do. I wrote the speech on paper. I took a photo of that. I uploaded it to DALL-E on ChatGPT 4. It took my notes and my thinking. That is the writing it could understand and interpret, because I can't even read my own handwriting, but it got 50% of it right and created a great expansion of my points, which I thought was very interesting. We ran a tax hackathon at Saffery a few weeks back with members of our tax teams, where we started to explore the business cases. What can we get through chat? What can we get through Bing AI? And whereas at the moment, we thought that, getting tax advice, it wasn't spot on right at the beginning. It wasn't particularly good at that. You had to probe it several times. What it was excellent at is if you gave it the advice and said, look, this is the tax advice, but we want to express it in this different way. We want to write it in a client language that they will understand, or we want to turn that into a 10-point plan of how you go about it. It was superb at doing that. And the feedback from our accountants and our tax advisors was, this is really going to change the way that we do work, not because it replaces us or replaces our effort, but it really actually helps us think wider and think differently about some of the things that we do. And this is just, we're just scratching the surface. Copilot, like it says on the tin, you're talking to the computer, it's talking back to you. I've noticed that already my own interactions with the computer has changed. And, I'm 48 this month. So, change is not coming as quick to me as it's sort of used to. And I'm having to change very ingrained habits around Google search. I've stopped using sort of Boolean algebra to sort of put search engines in, and I'm just talking to it now and it's talking back. I've learned to adapt and adopt this new paradigm, and I'm very excited about it. And I think more and more people are excited about it. I think, and I'll finish on this, is you don't often get enthusiasm by non-IT people in a firm. Chris mentioned before that during lockdown, people really began to appreciate IT and how they rescued them, and they were more open to what IT were doing in various projects. I think this is another example where, telling people about a new technology, they glaze over, they're not that interested. This is the different way around. People in our businesses are coming to us and saying, this is good, we want to do this is amazing. And that is I see there's a great opportunity when you've got that enthusiasm and that buy-in anyway. Then it really is about working with teams of people, collaborating, doing the hackathons, doing the research, thinking about it in safe environments, and doing it as a great collaboration moving forward to get the benefits and limit the risks. You can do that in tandem, but I don't think we should pass up the opportunity of the enthusiasm that these changes are going to bring. But it changes, it's very quick, it's very big. Of all, you think of smartphones was a big change. The advent of the internet was a big thing. Personal computing, moving away from mainframes, was a big thing. It is up there with those, except it's more rapid. So I think we have to run towards it rather than try and hold back the dam.
Thank you. Chris, what are you seeing?
I certainly share some of David's enthusiasm for it, but I would like to express a little bit of caution around it as well. AI, actually, I was reading City AM this morning, and there's a quote in there: AI takes its place amongst the most overused buzzwords of the year. There's another little blog I read, Blaine's Morning Porridge. AI everything is the stuff of bluff and bluster. And now, the reason I say that is, AI clearly is going to have a significant impact in the way in which we interact with technology, the way in which we run our businesses. But I do not believe, as Elon Musk said, I think only last week, that AI is going to take all of our jobs. You can put me on record today saying it is not going to take all of our jobs. It is going to have an impact. But
you are on record, Chris, now.
I am on record. Well, that's very good to hear. I think, again, I don't believe at the moment that AI, which is often purported to actually sort of think as the human brain thinks, AI to this day is still only is doing what it is being told to do by a human being. Yes, it is becoming a lot more sophisticated. Yes, it is learning along the way. Machine learning has been around for quite some time. So it is becoming more sophisticated, just in the way some of our sort of firms are using machine learning, and they have been for quite some time. Law firms are now using it for due diligence. For example, they're using it for document reviews. A number of years ago, I was working with a law firm, and we were using it to predict the outcome of litigation on cases by essentially searching vast banks of data. We were using it to help with conflict checking. And if we think of machine learning AI in terms of very, very sophisticated search engines, that is essentially what it is.
Yeah.
We are programming these pieces of technology to go out and find information and try and make some sense of that information and present it back to us. So if we think of it in those terms, I think it's a far more realistic sort of approach rather than sort of a lot of the froth which is currently out there. Caution around it is that, one of the issues of generative AI, ChatGPT, etc., is there's not a great deal of control about where it's getting the information from. In the same way, you go on Wikipedia, you've got no idea who's put that information in there, whether it's correct or not. And in professional services firms, what we do is give advice. And if we don't control the way we use this technology, I can imagine it'd be very easy to get to a position where you go to ChatGPT or some generative AI, it goes off, it comes back and presents an answer to you, be that a legal document or accounting document or whatever. If that is not factually correct, because you haven't got control where the information has come from, we can present that to a client. And if that's incorrect, the client can come back to us and quite rightly sue us or whatever for giving misinformation. So I think we need to be very careful about that. There's actually no doubt in time we're going to overcome these sorts of issues. So, almost sort of have a lot more control over where it's actually going off, where it's getting the data from before we present it. So I think we need to be a little bit careful about it. And with the other threat I think we might have around it is that everybody has access to this technology. A client at the moment will come to us because of our expertise in accounting, legal, whatever. If they can actually just sit down in front of their PC and input into ChatGPT or whatever and get an answer which they think is right, why do they need to use us? Now, we know why they need to use us because of our years and years of expertise, because we can interpret the information we're given, which they may not be able to do. But I think we might see some clients thinking, well, we don't need accountants, we don't need our lawyers now, we can do it ourselves, thank you. So I think it is going to be game changing. I've got no doubt about that, but I think we need to be very cautious about how we're using it and control how we use it very carefully and be very aware of the froth and the buzzwords and the bluff around us.
I do agree with that, Chris. I think it's why I say we should run towards it, not to be rapid, but it's certainly happening. And for us to understand how we should use it and how our clients might use it, and also our clients' understanding of what they're getting from a professional service firm and if they're using it and for what reason in a way that they're happy with, we have to think about it. What we can't do is sit back. We have to therefore spend our time looking very carefully, thinking about it, exploring it, building the business cases, also building the rules and the policies, which is very, very important. And we do that, I think, by participating, sort of moving forward. And because we can't, it's happening. I do agree, though. I mean, one of my preparation notes here about, we do need to chill out a bit is what I've written down. Sort of, it's never always tomorrow. There always is time. You can take a pause. You can take a breath, and you should, and think very carefully. Data sources are very, very important, both your own data sources and if you're relying on external data sources. You have to think about that very, very, very carefully so you understand what you're trusting and what you're not.
That's right.
That's part of the journey, isn't it? Exploring what it's doing and how it's doing it.
It certainly is, yeah. And I think, at the moment, we're talking about sort of AI as a separate thing. I think what we've got to recognize is that most technology which has been written over the last 3, 4, 5 years has involved a certain amount of this type of technology, machine learning, AI type technology, data analysis, data science type technology. Not much code is written these days without using that as a fundamental. So at the moment it's at the stage where it is seen as a separate thing. We talk a lot about AI, we talk a lot about machine learning. It's not too far away before it just becomes part of the way technology is actually developed and written. It'll just be there, be an integral part of it, like a lot of these other sort of technologies which have sort of evolved over the years. It just becomes the way we operate, the way we do business.
David, Chris, thank you ever so much for joining me today. It's been really insightful for someone that, I'm a user of IT in a professional services firm, and I think what we talked about today will be really useful for those people leading a professional services firm. We've covered a lot of ground. I think I'm coming out of this podcast thinking that perhaps we should do a whole one on AI alone as it continues to develop. So, but it's clear to me that, you know, the pace of change, especially post-pandemic, is just faster and faster. So I think, you know, we're always hugely grateful to David and his team for what they do to keep us safe in an IT world and you know, pushing towards the cutting edge of what professional services firms can do. So thank you for joining us today. So to close out, I just wanted to remind everyone listening that Saffery provide a range of tax, compliance and business advisory services to professional practices and financial services specialists. And if you'd like to find out more and contact an advisor, please visit our website at www.saffery.com. Thank you for joining us today.